Hi, welcome to Dialed In. I'm Don Knabe, Los Angeles County Supervisor for the 4th District. I'm pleased to welcome you back to another segment of Dialed In. This month, we're going to focus on a pretty tough issue, and one hard to talk about, and that's child sex trafficking. I have been honored to serve Los Angeles County for nearly 20 years. Never in my time in office have I heard of an issue as shocking and disturbing as what is happening to young girls right here in the streets of America. A lot of people think of human trafficking as happening over there in some third world country, just as I did. But in fact, across this nation, communities are waking up to the fact that it's happening right here on our streets, in our neighborhoods. Today, to tell us more about this horrific crime, we have an employee from our county's probation department and a survivor, a real brave young lady of child sex trafficking, joining us. I hope you will find the show informative. Welcome back to Dialed In. My first guest on the show is Michelle Guyman. Michelle is one of our probation directors in Los Angeles County. She's worked for the county for nearly 25 years. Michelle is one of the staff from our probation department, along with Hanya Cardenas, who brought the issue of child sex trafficking to my attention about 18 months ago. What they have accomplished since then is absolutely amazing. That's why I've named them my Wonder Women. I know a lot of people have views on bureaucrats and government workers, but let me tell you, Michelle and Hanya and her team have worked tirelessly, countless hours above and beyond their normal jobs to protect these young girls at the risk of being exploited, as well as developing programs to help treat the survivors. Michelle recently testified at the Senate Finance Committee in Washington, D.C. Michelle, thanks for joining me. Michelle, let's start from the beginning. How did you find out about child sex trafficking here in Los Angeles County?
Well, it all started back in November of 2010 when I was a part of the Interagency Council on Child Abuse and Neglect, which is a committee in Los Angeles that looks at the various types of child abuse throughout the county. Yes, I can. And I was asked to be on a subcommittee called Domestic Minor Sex Trafficking. Judge Donna Groman asked me to be on the committee, and I thought, sure. I didn't know anything about sex trafficking except for what happened in other countries. And I just didn't quite know how to make the connection about how probation would be involved in something like that. But, you know, I was up for traveling to Asia or Cambodia, and so I offered to be on the committee. And when the first committee meeting happened, I realized that what domestic minor sex trafficking is it was the young women that I had always worked with within probation within my career that were arrested for prostitution-related offenses that had come into probation. And it was quite a day for me, actually.
Well, as I've heard you talk a lot, I mean, we're talking about some very young girls here.
Yes.
And so what is that first step? How do they become involved in this whole area of prostitution?
Well, what we know is that our most vulnerable children are at risk. And a lot of what happens is there's a lot of stress and a lot of family dynamics that play into this, which cause kids to run to the street and become homeless. And statistics say that within 48 hours of a young person becoming homeless and on the street, they'll be approached by a pimp or a trafficker. And I think what makes them vulnerable is just being on the street as runaways, or being young people that are in our foster care system or within the probation system that are trying to search for this place to belong and to connect. And they often run from foster care, which makes them at more risk, again, because of being on the street.
And these pimps are telling them they look beautiful and they love them and all these kinds of things. So,
absolutely.
So what happens? What is the steps right now? And I mean, I guess where we were and where we are today from what you all have learned as it relates to a young girl being picked up for prostitution coming into our system.
Right. Well, again, 18 months ago or almost 2 years ago, we brought kids into our system, you know, on a daily and weekly basis as a result of an arrest for prostitution. And I think, like myself, we judge them as, you know, they were doing criminal activity and they were criminals coming into our system, or young women who we just, again, didn't really understand what was happening with them. So they would be brought into our juvenile halls and we would process them and we would work with them just like we would any other young woman in the camp system or in the juvenile hall system that were on probation.
So they were treated, you know, just as a criminal versus they're really a victim. I mean, it's hard to believe that, you know, some of these young girls, you've told me 10, 12 years old,
yes,
that they do that by choice. And so what happens to the pimps?
Well, I think in the past, not much has happened because I think for them this is kind of the perfect crime. The only way we really get a case against them is on the testimony of that 10, 11, 12-year-old girl, which she's afraid to testify. I think last year with the passing of Prop 35, that will change things to give stiffer penalties to traffickers. But then again, it all comes down to that young girl's testimony, which is, very difficult for her.
Very difficult, and these are some brave young ladies that we have to deal with.
Absolutely.
And I know that because of your efforts and others, that we're starting to see some stiffer penalties.
Yes.
Just recently, that Mac Wimp issue in Long Beach, federal charges being brought up against that. I think we're starting to raise a level of attention here in our own backyard.
Yes.
What about the dedicated courtrooms that we have?
We have a dedicated courtroom through Juvenile Justice, Department 260, Commissioner Pratt. Every Tuesday, what you'll find there is any young woman who's been brought in on a prostitution-related charge, or that we identify through other means within our department, will go to that court where we have a dedicated group of individuals, from advocates to probation staff to survivors, public defender, DA, anybody who can provide services for these young women. And we really do case management and multidisciplinary decision making to determine the best, what the next step is for her, to try to get her out of juvenile justice or out of detention as quickly as possible into services and support, so we can try to again wrap her with all the services we have to provide her so that she can again begin the healing process.
Isn't it true that in many cases, until we were able to do this, that being treated as a criminal versus a victim, that they were literally getting their hands slapped going back out in the streets or out in the parking lot and the pimp waiting there to pick them up? Is that correct?
Yes, absolutely. And I think what we've learned, again, we learn lessons every day. And over the last 18 months, we've learned a lot of those lessons, that there's this bond that happens between the young girl and the pimp. And he's always more than willing to be there to take her back.
And the issue of housing. I mean, as you develop, and we try to develop and support you with these wraparound services, from health services to mental health to public, whatever it may be, the housing issue is big. And I know that you've had some protection issues as it relates to these young girls. Is that correct?
Yes. And I think that's probably the biggest thing we struggle with right now, is because, again, myself as an adult, I can't stand that while this young girl is on the street or with the pimp, that bad things are happening or continue to happen. So in the beginning, I'm thinking, we need to keep these young women in a secure facility, because again, it's, that the bond that they keep running back to. And we're trying to break that. So I think it's a big debate across the country right now as to what to do with regards to housing.
Well, and as it relates to housing, sometimes we have to bring them right into our own system in the juvenile halls or camps. Yes. And again, isn't there an identity problem there too as well? Because obviously there's other young ladies that are owned by other pimps that, sort of pimp these girls out.
Yes.
And we need to protect them. Is that correct?
Yes, absolutely.
And I know that, recently you and I were in Washington together, when I testified in front of the Foreign Affairs Committee, but also we had some young survivors with us. And I mean, it was an incredible story, and to see the faces and things. But some of them literally were from here, but were living in other parts of the country for protection. Is that right?
Absolutely. And that's what we've had to do through the collaborative court when we make those decisions, is we try to really put the young person in the middle, and also her voice is important. What is it that she needs? And we need to be able to have those options in order to keep her safe. And some of our young women have chosen to move out of the state just so they can put some distance between them, and so they can start to heal without a lot of the pressures around them day to day.
So in our effort to react, to be more positive, bring wraparound services, that's the piece that it's getting better for us to be able to deal and allow you and the others to deal with these young ladies. Yes. On the front end, what are the kinds of things that either elected officials or the community, the kinds of things that we can do to allow these young girls not to be exploited on that front end?
Well, I think the two most important things is that we bring awareness, and I think that's what you're doing today. And I know that you've been a great supporter of this, and I appreciate the fact that when we first brought this to your attention, you took note, you jumped right in with both feet, and it was always, what can we do, what else can we do? And I think bringing awareness to people is the first key, because unless we start to change our attitude and our views about these are not teenage prostitutes, but they're victims of sexual exploitation, nothing really changes for them. So I think awareness is key. I think prevention is key, and we've launched a massive prevention effort throughout our communities where survivors are integral in that process to talk to them about what trafficking is and what puts them at risk and what to look out for and what pimp tactics are, which I think is, you know, young girls have a right to know what they're up against.
Absolutely. I mean, I think you have taught me, you and Honey have taught me so much, and obviously learned more about this issue than I ever thought I would. But
right.
One of the things that amazed me was when I testified, I'm sure you had the same result, in front of the Foreign Affairs Committee. It was a full committee.
Yes.
And it was something that was supposed to last 30 minutes, and 2.5 hours later, we're still there. I mean, the members of Congress that were in this committee from all over the United States,
yes.
they were just, you know, like awestruck in the sense like, oh my gosh, I think that's in my own backyard kind of a thing. Mm-hmm. So I think, you know, if we can raise this level, you know, like we've done with Safe Surrender and some other programs where,
yes.
you know, it's treated what it is. It's dramatic. It's mm-hmm. horrific for these young girls.
Absolutely.
Legislatively, I know you've worked on some things. I think the SB 473 is working its way through mm-hmm. as it relates to more severe penalties for the pimps. I mean, that's the other piece of this,
right.
is that these dudes are out there, they're bad guys and doing bad things to these young ladies. Also, we have the issue of gangs,
right.
where gangs, you know, it's a lot safer to pimp a girl out 6-7 times a night than dealing drugs or guns, right?
Absolutely. Well, and I think for the predators who are preying on these young women and young men is that, again, it's the perfect crime because they realize the only way there's going to be a case is if this 10, 11, 12-year-old testifies against me, and that's probably unlikely going to happen. And so I think they feel very secure in that, you know, this is something I can get away with.
The one story, so we sort of wind down this interview, you know, that I'd like for you to share with people just so they know how horrific this is, and that's the story that you've told me about these young ladies being taken out to the desert to witness the death of one of their partners. Is that correct?
Right. Well, there was a young woman who talked to us about, you know, and again, there's a lot of discipline that happens with young girls when they don't do as the trafficker wants them to do. And I think sometimes the violence gets to be so much that sometimes they want to send a message to other girls. So there was a case where a young girl went, you know, the trafficker, the pimp, took her to the desert and burned a young girl to death to let them know, don't think I won't do this to you.
And that's just, I mean, it's beyond comprehension right here in our own backyard, right here in America. I mean, it's just horrific. Final question. What should people do, or what should they do if they think that they see this happening in their community, whether it's on a metro system or on the street or in a neighborhood? What should they do?
Well, I think the first thing they have to do is they have to do something. I think we can no longer afford to turn our head to walk past this issue, to feel like this doesn't apply to me, I don't want to get involved, but we have to get involved. You know, the kids are counting on us, our young, most vulnerable children are counting on us. And I think the most important thing is to call law enforcement. Our law enforcement agencies are really, again, as we become aware, they become aware. And so we're in this fight together, and I think to reach out to law enforcement, let them know what you see, where this is happening, and so we can help get to the bottom of it.
Right, and let them check it out and see the scene.
Absolutely.
Because I think together, I can't thank you and Hanya enough for, number one, bringing it to my attention, but I think more importantly, as we raise the level of this horrific crime, you should be very proud of your work, number one. Number two, I think at the end of the day, the most important piece of this are the young ladies and young men that are, you know, being treated so badly that maybe we can get our arms around this issue and raise it to a national level. But Michelle, I really appreciate you being on the show and taking the time to be with me, but I think most importantly appreciate what you do on behalf of these young women and men throughout our county and our nation.
And we appreciate your support. We couldn't do it without you.
Thank you.
Absolutely.
Thank you for being here.
Oh, thank you.
Welcome back to Dialed In. You may recognize my next guest as the voice in our anti-child sex trafficking awareness video, Manipulated. Her name is Jessica, and she is a survivor. She was forced into a life of prostitution at the age of 12, and for 6 years was passed around from pimp to pimp, repeatedly being exploited for money. She's now 28, has a daughter, and has changed her life forever. Now Jessica works with the Mary Magdalene Project, helping mentor young girls and guiding them away from that horrific life on the streets. She's an incredibly brave young lady, and I'm honored that she has agreed to join us today. Jessica, thanks for being here. Maybe we can sort of deal with some background issues, like where did you grow up?
I grew up in South Central LA, spent a little bit of time in Watts, California as well.
And what was that life like growing up?
Life for me was a little bit of half and half. I mean, I came from a good family. My grandmother and my grandfather took care of me. My grandfather's a pastor. My grandmother was a preschool teacher, so I got education pretty early. But then there was another side. I dealt with a certain amount of abuse, dealt with some abandonment, and but luckily my grandparents were there to step in at some point.
So the first horrific step into prostitution, how did that happen?
Basically, I was groomed. A lot of abuse happened from the time I was 3 up till I was 6. And
the abuse happening from?
3 years to 6 years of age. And I think that's where things kind of began for me. I thought domestic violence was okay. I thought that it was normal. I thought that every house that I passed had that going on.
Just a way of life.
Just a way of life. So that was kind of an opening for me. I started getting into a lot of arguments with my mother, started running away. There was abuse in between time. And eventually I ran into my first pimp.
And when you say you ran away, I mean, so you had your grandma and grandpa there to sort of help you. You weren't living with them, though. You were still living with your family, right?
Yes, definitely. My grandmother fell sick, so I ended up moving back in with my mother. And basically, people that she was associated with, everybody wasn't a good person, basically.
Right. And so as you met your first pimp, went into that world, what age was that?
It was 11 when I started. 14 was my my first real pimp.
So how did you escape? I mean, at what point, at what age?
I basically escaped at the age of 20, a few days before my 21st birthday. The pimp that I had been with for a while, he had a lot of underage girls, and a few of his friends, we were all in Arizona, a few of his friends had girls in dog cages, and they were torturing them, basically. One girl got away, and she told. The police came, they kicked in the door, they took me, they took him. They released me, and I ended up coming back to LA, and because I didn't want to be with him anymore, he put a green light on me, and a green light meaning that everybody can do whatever they want to me. And he said basically that was the punishment for betraying him.
And that green light mean that you're identified probably via a tattoo kind of a situation, correct?
Yes, yes, definitely. Everybody could identify me easily with the tattoo.
So how did you start your life over? I mean, you've had an amazing journey. I mean, you've been through hell.
Yes.
And now you're sort of looking at heaven.
Yes.
And changing your life around.
Yes.
So how did that happen?
After I escaped, basically, it was a pimp that knew me for a while. He held me for maybe a couple hours and put me out to work. And as soon as I felt as though he was gone, I got away. And I called my mother. My mother came and got me for the first time. And she was there quick as I don't know what, basically.
Did she know you were back in town?
Yes, she found out at that point, and she came and got me.
Was that pimp aware of the green light?
The pimp the last pimp, yes. Yeah. But he wanted me for financial reasons rather than to hurt me or kill me.
So what was your support system like? First of all, mom comes and gets you, which is a blessing.
Oh, yes.
So what support system wrapping around you at that particular point for you to sort of make the next step to do the right thing that you wanted to do, that you had the strength and guts to do?
You know what, it's been a few people and a few things over a certain amount of time that have been my support system. It started out with my mother being there for me. My grandmother definitely, even though she was sick, she still tried her hardest. My mother had me call 211, and I ended up basically getting in contact with the Mary Magdalene Project. And I actually went through the program and developed a few great relationships through the Mary Magdalene Project.
And so that's the 211 system we have here available in Los Angeles County, is that correct?
Yes, definitely.
And that's sort of helped you get that direction and find the information you needed.
Yes.
So it's amazing what the Mary Magdalene Project's been able to do for folks like yourself and others. Tell me about your job now.
My job, basically, I do the My Life, My Choice curriculum, which is the 10-week, curriculum that is a preventative tool as well as a a tool to help young ladies get out of the life.
For our viewers, My Life, My Choice is an incredible program we're trying to put into the educational system, and Jessica's a key player in all that.
Yes, thank you. And I've done some work with Michelle Guyman. She's given me the great opportunity to, you know, go into juvenile halls and speak with kids that have been sexually exploited or are in danger or not in danger at all. And I also, you know, work with the women through the Mary Magdalene Project, and I help do some trainings and a lot of different things.
So how do you think your story is impacting other potential victims and people that are involved in the system? It obviously has to have a dramatic impact.
You know, I've heard that it does have a dramatic impact on a lot of people. I can't say for certain if it really does. All I know is that basically when I get up and I go to work every day, when I push forward, push past my fears, I feel as though, you know, at least if I could plant a seed in one person's head, you know, that I've done my job.
Have you ever been contacted, any follow-up by any of the people that you've talked? I mean, because probably you're not doing so much one-on-one, but in groups inside the halls or the camps or things. So has anyone ever contacted you?
Yes, yes. I've had quite a few young ladies contact me and
Want to get out.
That want to get out of the life, and some that just want me to be there for them and support them until they can.
So is there anything available today that would have, I mean, you're looking back now, you've been through it.
Yes.
Is there anything available today to these young ladies, or would have been available to you back then, that could help you in that situation to avoid going into that life? Or was it because you were so young and so vulnerable?
You know, I really do believe that I was really young and really vulnerable, not to paint myself as a complete victim, but children are vulnerable. You know, we're very, you know, young ladies are very impressionable. And I believe that, like the My Life, My Choice curriculum, I think that could have helped me stay out of the life, because I think I would have known what I was getting into, what I was being pushed into, what I was being groomed for, because My Life, My Choice covers so much about that particular lifestyle.
So as this My Life, My Choice, you know, the curriculum is very involved. So were you in school then during this abusive days, the early days? You were still in school and everything else, right, until you?
I was in school up till I was 14, and the pimp that I was with said that I didn't need school. I would make more money than a doctor, you know, doing what he wanted me to do. And even when I did try to go to school, it was wrong and I was punished for it, so.
You tried to go to school and you got punished for that too?
Yes.
So do you still, so you've been out now, what, 8 years basically?
Yes, yes, 8 years. Going strong.
Going strong.
Yes.
It's a pretty amazing process.
Yeah.
Do you think there's anything that we in government or society can do in general to assist either preventing it or once they enter the system? As an example, I finally realized where you and I had met, and we met when we dedicated that dedicated courtroom.
Yes. Yes.
And I know your comment at that time, that was a big deal, right, to have the wraparound services?
Yes, definitely. I still believe that wraparound is a great tool to have. I believe also too that for young ladies, instead of having them put in jail, you know, I mean, even if they go into lockup, have the therapy, have the support system there, offer different services. I can't say all of everything, but just having services readily available for young ladies, period.
So how do we deal with the green light issue as it relates to inside the system? I mean, you bring as I understand it from Michelle and others, that, you know, a young lady can go into the system to be protected because that's the only housing available.
Yes.
But yet there's other people out there that are willing to shed green light on the young lady we're trying to assist.
Right.
How does that work?
For, you know, as far as the green light, I mean, it can go many different ways. I have seen young ladies and talked to young ladies that have had a green light put on them, and they felt as though they were the safest in lockup. But it's that issue of when they get out. Where can they go? Where can they be placed? What I've seen that's worked a good amount of time, not saying that it works 100%, but changing the area where they live, changing their surroundings. Sometimes it could be a big shock to them, and some may want to run back to what they know. Not saying that they like it, but it's something familiar. And then you have others that adapt really well, and they're fine being taken out of an environment that they've been placed, that they've been living all their lives.
Because I think, to me, it's hard. I can't relate. I mean, obviously, I've been blessed with a pretty good life and, a great family and, the support system. So the mental health piece of all this, the trauma of being young, being abused, prostitution, being beat up, being threatened. When you make that inner commitment, Jessica says, I want to leave. I want to change my life.
Yes. Oh, yes.
So that mental health piece of dealing with all that, did you go through counseling? How did you deal with that? That's got to be the most significant change in your life, because you did know the other way.
The mental piece of it was really difficult because you're dealing with so much reprogramming. This guy comes in and you don't have your own identity, you're sharing his identity. And the post-traumatic stress disorder, the anxiety, the depression, those are really big things. And therapy was a big tool for me. It still is a big tool for me today. It helps me cope, helps me problem solve. I've seen a lot of young ladies as well that have gone through therapy, and it's been working little by little. But if it's something, I believe that therapy is something that's a constant work. It's a constant force, and at some points, the young ladies will open up.
Right, it's almost one day at a time, isn't it?
One day at a time.
So if you were to look back and you look at My Life, My Choice, what is the one key element of that you would say to those that are watching this show today?
The one key element of My Life, My Choice.
The one that sort of assists, makes the basic decision to move beyond or to avoid this lifestyle.
It's really hard to say like one piece of My Life, My Choice, because the whole curriculum is wonderful. You have self-esteem, you have ways of taking care of yourself, identifying a predator. It's just so many different things. My Life, My Choice in total is a wonderful tool. I think if you take each session, you take a little bit of something from each one, and you're able to
put it
grow.
all together, and that's sort of the wraparound for the individuals you're dealing with.
Yes.
All I can say, Jessica, is you have to be incredibly proud of what you've accomplished. I know you still have difficult things to deal with. It's just day to day, but you have had such a dramatic positive change, and you're a blessing to all of us that have had the opportunity to know you and get to know you. And I love the mural, and I know that whole story's coming out
Yes.
as a woman of achievement. And so I want to personally thank you for being on the show, number one, and sharing with all of us. I know this is one of the first times you've done that.
Yes.
And we appreciate that, but I think more importantly, we are proud of you and what you've accomplished.
Thank you so much, and
God
thank you
bless
for
you.
having me here.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you again for tuning in to Dial In. The issue of child sex trafficking is a very horrific epidemic happening right here in our own backyard. It's a very difficult issue to talk about, but we need people to be aware. The lives of our young girls are at risk, and it's up to us to help them. This is an issue that is extremely important to me, and I thank you for taking the time to listen and to learn more about this problem. I'd also like to thank Jessica for coming on my show today. Without her courage, incredible courage, and the bravery of other young sex trafficking survivors to come forward and share their stories, many more girls may end up in a life on the streets. I'd also like to thank Michelle and Hanya and all of our probation staff for their incredible work on this very issue here in Los Angeles County. We have become a national leader in fighting this crime because of their tireless work and passion. It's been 18 months since we started this journey here in Los Angeles County, and I'm proud of what our county staff has accomplished. Young girls, those that we are responsible to protect, must know that no matter where they are from or what they have been through, that they are the true victims, and that we are here for support to help them realize their lives are valuable, that they are worthy of the dreams that they once imagined. We must do everything we can to get these young girls off the track and on a path to a better life ahead. Thank you very much for tuning in to this episode of Dial In. Join us next month for a brand new show.